to Death and Aliens, an in-depth look at horror and sci-fi TV from two friends who vaguely know what they're doing. I'm MK.
And I'm Courtney.
And Courtney, how are you?
I'm still tired. That has not changed from the last episode we recorded an hour ago. Um, but I'm okay. I just got back from vacation
No.
and me and Rachel went on another Virgin cruise and it's just splendid every time. I just love it. The food is good. The rooms are great. Like we got just like a standard room and it has like a balcony and a hammock and all this stuff and it's not crazy expensive for what you're getting. Like I think there are interior rooms that are like a little bit cheaper, but even so, we spent like it was like 2,000 for both of us to go, like with everything. That's with taxes and tip and fees and everything. Like
Nice.
and it's just such an elevated cruise experience from like Carnival, which Carnival's fine for what it is, but it's just not the same. But we always do like the dance parties. So we did the big Scarlet Night again. And you just get to wear red and then dance in the pool. And it's truly the best night. And then I couldn't feel my legs for the next like 4 days because I danced for too many hours in a pool.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was really fun. They do a lot of like workouts and stuff too. So we did the like VHS workout, which is like the Richard Simmons RIP workout, a little bit of jazzercising. They had like shake weights and stuff. It was so funny. It was like also like a real workout. Like we were sweating at the end. Yeah, and they had so we went during the festival. Eats Festival. I don't know what it's called.
Okay.
Something, it's food and there's festival.
Perfect.
And so they have all kinds of different fun things. So like every restaurant I went to had like an amuse-bouche before you had your meal. And like so we had like this spicy like tofu bite at the Korean barbecue restaurant, and then this like really nice little mozzarella bite at like the mostly vegan restaurant. And so it was just we ate way too much. As you can imagine, we ate way too much, but it was well worth it. And we did this really cool dinner series. So they have this restaurant called The Wake, which is like their steakhouse.
Yeah.
And they did a like a beer pairing. And so you got like this 4-course meal that was paired with beers. And it starts with like this, it starts with a beer cocktail. So it's like a saison. I think that's how you say it.
Okay.
Saison beer and gin and stuff. I don't know. I'm not like a super gin cocktail person anyway.
Right.
So I didn't really drink that one. But then they give you like our first course was it starts with a C. It's like a really thin tuna slice. Like you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
I can't remember what it's called.
Yeah. No, the word is gone.
Yeah, but it was paired with the. Go ahead.
I was gonna say tartare, but that's not the same thing. That's just that it's raw.
Right. It wasn't the same thing. It was almost like a carpaccio, like it was really thin like that, but it wasn't called that. It was something else, like I don't remember, but it was delicious. It was tuna, and then it had it was paired with like an IPA, which I don't love IPAs. But this one was fine. It was a little less like super hoppy and a little smoother than like you get sometimes like that bitter taste with like an IPA. That citrusy pop. So it was really good. And then we had the second dish was like a branzino appetizer, which I love branzino. It's just like a white flaky fish that's so good. That was paired with a lager of sorts or something. It was a very Belgian ale. It was a Belgian ale, which is one of my favorites. It's what I've had before. He was like, I hope you can all try new things. And I had 2 of the 4 beers before. But like the place, because there was a Belgian bar behind the bar I worked at in Manhattan, and we used to go there all the time.
Yeah.
And so I was like, oh, I've actually had this one. I really like it. It's my like go-to when I get there. And he was like, oh, what bar? I was like, BXL. And he was like, no one ever has heard of BXL. I was like, I know. I know. I've been there and there's not ever a lot of people there. But yeah, so we had that. And then our main course was like a short rib. I don't know. It fell apart. I don't know what it was. It was very good though. It was like a short rib that fell apart. And it was paired with a dark beer. like that had been made in like whiskey, like oak barrels.
Ooh.
So it also had it smelled like bourbon, and the longer it sat out, it started like it also had like a toffee smell when you first got it. So it was like kind of like a sweet bourbon, but the more it like went and like sat, it became more like a bourbon and less sweet.
Okay.
It was very interesting. It was very good. And then we ended with like a raspberry mousse with an Omgang, which we sold that at Long Room. So
Yeah.
it's a wheat beer. That's
Nice.
I already knew I liked, and so it was nice. And then we left there and went to a speakeasy.
Perfect.
So then we left our beer tasting and went and had 3 more cocktails at the speakeasy. And I won a yo-yo and bottle service, but we didn't have time to go to bottle service our last day, so I didn't get to do bottle service.
I was laughing
Um,
because you sent me something that was like when you win a yo-yo and bottle service, and it was a video of you playing with a yo-yo, but there was no alcohol bottle. And I was
yeah,
like, I'm confused.
because the bottle service was at one of the bars in Miami. Because what they did was they brought on like some of the more well-renowned bartenders from Miami to do the
Got
speakeasy
it.
event. And so he gave us like bottle service to his bar, but then we were theoretically flying out at 8:45, and the bar didn't open till after 5. And so we don't really want to push it. Like
No.
it's one thing to like drink before you get on the plane, but it's another thing to like drink and try and fight an Uber and fight security and like
Yeah, for sure.
so we ended up giving it away to one of my friends from a couple of my friends from my lemon group. They were getting on the boat as we were getting off the boat, so we ended up having lunch with them and just giving them our bottle service. So they'll probably use it when they get back. But
Nice.
it was just like, it's just the best. I love food pairings. They had a Scotch pairing with chocolate. I'm not a huge Scotch person, but this I could drink every second of my life. It was so amazing.
Nice.
So we've already put our deposit down for our next cruise. I texted Brie when we got off, and I was like, "We put our deposit down. Did you get an email?" She's like, "Yes, I am already on it." I was like, "Excellent. Glad we're working on this already."
Great.
It was really funny. So yeah, it was really nice, and it's good. Like me and Rachel have both been so stressed about everything between like work and like she has a licensing exam, and then I'm getting ready to like study for the bar. Like it was nice to just get away for a week and not stress about um anything really. We just kind of like put all of our work and studies and stuff to the side for now. So it was nice. But so how are you?
Less good than that.
Oh good. We hardcore swap sides.
Yeah, no, it's just about a house,
Yeah,
and I don't know if you know, but that's a lot of work.
it is.
And so I think I've cried every day this week.
Yeah.
But it's because my to-do list, I like made a to-do list for the house, and I made a to-do list for the wedding, and I made a to-do list for getting a new job. And then I realized that I never made a to-do list for my classes, but I also needed to make a to-do list for my classes. And so I
Right.
was just like, and then like people keep saying things about how since we're buying a house and we're budgeting and everything, we have to like maybe think about scaling back our honeymoon next year. And I was like,
Oh.
I do understand why you're saying that, but I don't think you understand that planning this honeymoon and like thinking about being able to go out of the country again and how long I haven't traveled because I've been thinking about planning and saving all of this money is the literally only thing getting me through. Like,
Right.
so
Yeah. Bless it.
so I am just like very close to the edge of a complete mental breakdown.
Look, I get it. I
Like
live there a lot. So
we were trying to work on a monthly budget and figuring out exactly what we can afford for a mortgage yesterday, and it turned into me sitting on my pool deck crying to my mom about a conversation I had with my ex 10 years ago that made me incapable of having a conversation about something I needed to talk to Dan about. Like it's
yeah,
been that kind of week, and I'm just like,
yeah,
here we are.
I get that. I get that.
So I'm just gonna talk about Stargate and pretend that nothing else is real in my life.
I love it. Would you like me to give you a little spiritual enlightenment before
I
you go there?
I would love to. I would love that actually. I was going to
Great.
ask you that, but then I'm also so
Didn't.
fucking hot. No, and I told Courtney this before we started recording. I don't know what's wrong. It, I'm dying. I'm sweating to death. And I think it's the alcohol or the fact that it's 90 degrees outside or the combination. But like, I'm barely wearing clothes and my air conditioning's on. I don't know what's wrong, but I'm gonna pass out. So
Well, if you pass out, I'll call your mom.
thanks.
You got it.
So why don't you give me some things to get me through this next little while?
Well, this is just a little quick quip, and I'm sure you've heard it before, but I don't think I've said it on the podcast. So here we are. But just quick and to the point, it's no use going back to yesterday because I was a different person then. Lewis Carroll.
It's fact. My favorite
It's
book.
just that's one of my favorites.
It's
I
my
know.
favorite. It's my favorite book. It's my favorite. Like I get it. I feel that way
It's one of
all
the
the time.
best. One of the best.
Today we're talking about Stargate SG-1, season 6, episode 10, which is called Cure. Although I did not write that down, and it took me way too long to figure that out. It premiered on Friday, August 16th, 2002. It was rated 7.8 stars. And for the first time in the summer of 2002, everything is different. Well, no, one thing's not different. The number one movie is still XXX from last week,
All right.
but fine. The number one song is no longer Hot in Here, but it is still by Nelly. It is Dilemma by Nelly and Kelly Rowland.
Look, I get it. If you're gonna knock out Hot in Here, Dilemma's a good contender.
Yeah. And the top book is a book I actually have read.
Ooh.
It is Lovely Bones by Alice Sebold.
Uh-huh.
And we've talked about that.
I also have read that.
I think we've talked about that on the podcast about how I can't watch the movie. I refuse to.
Yeah, I started the movie and then I didn't finish. I fell asleep, but it wasn't like I actively didn't finish it. I just, something happened. Either I fell asleep or I left wherever I was. Just, it never happened. But it's a really haunting book. It's a good book, but it's very haunting. Like,
yeah, I read it on the
stays
beach.
with you.
I read it on the beach in the Dominican Republic while drinking a pina colada, and it was a really weird juxtaposition of feelings.
Yeah, that's a weird combination there. I read it like at home during the summer. Like it was a very normal place.
Yeah, no, mine was not. Sorry, I just literally threw my microphone at myself.
Well, things happen.
Yeah.
Things happen.
On this day, there was really only one thing I could find. The Women's Peace Train began its journey from, I can't remember where, to Johannesburg in South Africa. I don't know if you know anything about the Women's Peace Train.
I don't.
So the Women's Peace Train is a movement for women's equality that sometimes it's actually a physical train ride, and other times it's like a symbolic thing, but it has happened in like a lot of different countries at different times in the world. And the first one, I want to say the first one was in the American South, but I might be very wrong. The women's
That feels wild for the women's equality movement to start itself.
Well, it's not only about women's equality. So the Women's Peace Train, no, but the Women's Peace Train, it's run by women, and it's women's groups who are like protesting and like trying to get awareness out. But they protest war, militarization, violence on women, violence on children, women's rights, all kinds of stuff. Their very first one was in New York City, from taking the train from New York City to Washington, D.C. in 1962. And they wanted to meet with John F. Kennedy to talk about the House Un-American Activities Committee and the communism and the U.S. Arms movements.
Yep. It's the 60s. That makes sense.
Yep. And then they've done one from Montreal to Ottawa in Canada.
I have really sad news while we're on a similar topic. Yeah. I learned this week, speaking of the 60s during the Freedom Times, Bernice Johnson Reagan passed away a couple weeks ago. She was one of the Sweet Honey in the Rock writers, and she was a tarot writer, and she marched with MLK, and
that's so sad.
It was sad. I know. I worked with her. Well, she was not really in the headspace, but I worked with her daughter a lot
Yeah.
for the last 5 years. And I just saw 2 weeks ago that she passed away. And so she was
So
part of that
sorry.
whole situation.
But they also had one in 1962 from Montreal to Ottawa. They had one from Stockholm to Russia in the 80s. Um, they did one in the 80s in Australia. They did one in the 90s in from Georgia to Abkhazia.
I
They
don't
also
know Abkhazia. Where is that at?
it was an autonomous region of the Soviet Union. It doesn't actually exist anymore.
Okay.
Um, it is it's in an area that is like kind of Russia, kind of Abkhazian is a nationality, but there was this like section of like between Russia and Ukraine that was an autonomous state from the Soviet Union. I believe that it is technically part of uh it's a disputed region. It doesn't actually belong, it
Sure.
belongs to a bunch of different countries. It's a whole,
And then how close is Georgia to Russia? I thought it was farther down than that.
Oh, it is. It's not. I mean, they also
It was a long train ride.
correct. No, the next one they did was from Helsinki, Finland to Beijing, China. So
Okay, I was.
they're not always
I
short.
see.
The one that I was talking about in South
I was
Africa
like
that
New York to
happened.
DC.
Yes, it started the one that I'm talking about that started today in our history of the podcast started in Kampala, Uganda and went to
Mm,
Johannesburg, South Africa. So it was
okay.
it took I think 12 days.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know. I was thinking like a week-long train, and I was like,
Yeah, no, some of
or
them
a
are
couple
longer
of
than others.
days.
Depends on how big the thing that they're protesting are. The
Sure.
women's those all the ones that I just talked about were actual physical train rides. They had another big thing that the Women's Peace Train worked on that was not a physical train ride that just took place in Israel. And that was 3 years of ongoing protests. Um,
Wow. I mean, yeah.
I mean, they stopped in 2017, but it was 3 years of protesting. So like sometimes they were physical train rides, not always. But this one was to, I believe it was protesting. Can't remember what was it protesting. I tried to take notes. It was protesting environmental issues. There was an
Mm,
Earth Summit that dealt with the dealt with sub-Saharan Africa, and there was also some things going on with the United Nations Development Fund for Women, and uh, so the outcome of the summit was to include women's empowerment and ensure Indigenous peoples' participation in the implementation of decision making in order to reach the United Nations developmental goals.
because I was thinking there was a Clean Air Act, but I don't guess there were. I mean, there are a few that happened around them, but they weren't the big ones I was thinking of. I
No,
think the ones
this
I'm thinking of are like 93.
Yeah,
So
no,
this was early.
this was more to make sure that women and minority groups, especially indigenous peoples, were included in
Mhm.
governmental decisions about things like the environment.
Oh, I see. I see. I see. That
Hmm.
makes sense. Yeah, that
Yeah,
makes sense.
yeah, yeah. So yeah, that was all I got for today in history. Um,
Thank you for my history lesson that I asked too many questions about.
it's okay. I was like, the thing is, I literally just wrote the Women's Peace Train began its journey in South Africa. That's all I wrote.
Yeah.
I knew that was not going to be enough detail. So,
You know me too well.
well, also, I wanted to talk about it, so I don't know why I didn't write
Right.
more. Um, This episode was directed by Andy Makita, written by Damian Kindler, who, remember, we talked about last week and has now become a full-time writer, and edited by Rick Martin.
The first one, Andy.
Andy Makita. He hasn't written in a while, but
Okay.
he is or directed in a while, but he is one of our like Martin Wood and Peter DeLuise obviously are our big
Right.
directors, but Andy Makita is one of the ones that pops up like once or twice every season.
Got it. Got it. Then I
Um,
will ask you again at the end of the season when he comes again.
Perfect. The the guest star who played Dolan. who is the head of the Hangar community organization, peoples, whatever. Society, that's the word I couldn't think of. He's played by Malcolm Stewart. He was known for Jumanji, Riverdale, and Best in Show. So, like all things that are not
So I've
weird.
definitely seen him before then. Cool, cool, cool.
He attended the University of Vermont and Columbia. He has appeared in Broadway as well as on TV, including the original cast of Dracula on Broadway. He is a licensed pilot.
When was that? Was that 80s?
It was longer ago than that, I think. Earlier than that, I want to say.
How old is this guy?
He was born in 1946, I think.
So he's like 60 something in this episode?
Yeah, he's in his 50s or 60s in this episode, yeah. His father was the first, so he's a licensed pilot, and his father was the first person to cross the Atlantic 100 times. We broke that record in 1944.
So like they made a plane and he was like, great, I'm gonna fly it 100 times.
Well, no. Malcolm Stewart is a pilot. I don't know that his father's crossing of the Atlantic was entirely by plane. It may have also been by boat.
I see.
But he
I was like, that's a bold choice.
He did go back and forth across the ocean. Was the first person to ever successfully do that 100 times, which is a lot. Even by plane today, that's a lot. Crossing the Atlantic 100 times means you went back and forth between the US and Europe 50 times.
Right.
I've done it 3 times.
I've done it 0 times.
Just kidding. I don't know why I said that as if I didn't also move overseas and fly.
Yeah, I don't really know.
I've crossed the Atlantic 7 times.
Yeah, I wasn't going to question you, but I was like, I don't think that's right, but okay.
Well, no, because most of the time when I flew back and forth from Thailand, I flew the Pacific route because I flew the Atlantic route once and it was awful. But I did it to stop and see my sister in Turkey. But so that's why it's an odd number because I flew from here to the UK and back. I flew from here to Germany and back. I flew from here to the UK and back. So that's 6. But then I flew from here to Turkey and then continued on. So that's why it's 7.
You flew, was that including last year?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, 7 times. That's
fine. That's
and
funny.
he did it 100 before there were commercial airlines. So
right.
Good for him.
It's quite a lot.
Honestly, the last couple guest stars have been interesting, but their parents have been more interesting.
That's so funny.
So yeah, that's all I got for our intro. So let's get into it. Right. We start this episode with a group of people standing by a gate waiting for someone to come through because they recently discovered temple ruins and this is their first alien contact. They make some really funny comments about having like lovely diplomatic relations and then Jack pops.
I was waiting. They're like talking about it and they're like, we're gonna speak to like the highest level of people.
He's gonna be so educated and and diplomatic, and then Jack just comes in, howdy folks. I was like, oh my
like, oh, or that.
Or that. And so then SG-1 arrives, they take them to the city to begin negotiating. And they tell them they discovered the gate and what it's used for. But they haven't quite figured out how to work it. They're like, we like get it. We know what it does, but we don't know how to take like the information we have and then like turn it into travel.
Right.
And Sam's like, don't worry, it took us a while too. So they begin to discuss the idea of trade and communication. And Dolan, their leader, tells the team about a drug called tritonin that they have invented that completely rids the body of any ailments. And then we have the credits.
So miracle cure.
A miracle cure.
And I was a little skeptical. People are like, this will make you never die. And I was like, or one thing is going to go wrong and the entire planet's going to die. That's always my first consensus on something like that.
Well, to be fair, somehow both of those were correct.
Yeah. Yep.
So Jonas and Teal'c go to the temple ruins and meet Zena Velk, who is an archaeologist there, and she is showing them around. And while they're doing that in the negotiation room, Sam and Jack are asking, obviously, for Tritonin so that they can study it. And they're like, in negotiation, like, we are going to offer you a rudimentary lesson on like how to use the DHD and how to use the gate, and a list of 10 planet coordinates for places that are safe for you to travel to like meet new people and make trades. And
Mhm.
they're like, actually, like, here's the places we want to go. And they hand them a list of planets, and it's all gold homeworlds.
Mhm. Yeah.
For somebody who like just discovered that you had a gate, you got real big balls.
Yeah. You know a little bit more than you're talking about too.
So then Zena takes Teal'c and Jonas into the temple, and she's showing them a section of a wall that they had not yet been able to finish deciphering. And she's like talking to them about the language and the hieroglyphs and everything. And Teal'c tells her that it's talking about the Goa'uld Chakran, who was defeated by Apophis. And they tell her that Apophis was also defeated. And she was like, oh, that's like such good news. Also, I need to tell you a secret, but I can't tell you now because there's security around. So I don't want to be overheard. I'll talk to you later.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, that's a lot. Also, this is not in the trivia, but it's important. Chakran is not a name you've ever heard before. In the
Right.
show.
Okay. Okay.
Okay,
That was
yeah.
my question.
Yes, chakran is not a name you've ever heard before, either in the show or in real life. So the idea, no, the idea is that the Goa'uld who have had contact with Earth exist in the myths and legends of the people of Earth. But that
Right.
doesn't mean that every Goa'uld ever has had contact with Earth's people. And so not all of them, there are occasionally, most of them have, obviously, through whether it's directly or indirectly, but not
Mhm.
all of them have. And so if you have a Goa'uld that has never had any contact with Earth, why would the people of Earth know about it? Why would there be stories? So Chakran doesn't exist in Earth's mythology because he never came to Earth.
So not only are we limited to Earth mythology of the millions of gods that we could potentially have as Goa'uld, but we now have random mythology that the Earth do not know about.
Correct.
Great. There are more gods than there are people.
I mean, you know, you know. There's a very interesting thing, and I am obviously not caught up in the All About Terra, the No Place Like Terra podcast to where I am in our podcast. There's an interesting
Right.
thing that has been coming up a lot in their season 2 episodes where they've been talking about whether or not the Goa'uld existed as gods first, or if the Goa'uld took the persona of gods that existed on Earth. Like, which
Mm,
came first, the chicken or the egg? And I think
right.
Chakran and his existence and the stories there prove that we took their stories as our legends, not the other way around.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Because if there's things we don't know about,
exactly. So
yeah,
it couldn't be that
that makes sense.
it couldn't be that they just took personas of things that we already believed in, because then it would only be limited to things that we've heard of.
Yeah. Yeah. I was really just assuming my memory was shot because it usually is when it comes to names anyways. Because I was like, if this is how Apophis got into power by taking out this guy, surely it's been mentioned.
No,
Um, but no, we're
no.
just add more puzzle pieces that they pretend like we might should know.
I mean, to be fair, they sometimes you have to know them, and sometimes you don't really need to know them for the
Right.
story to make sense. Um,
And that's fair, but sometimes they tell me like it's just in passing, and then I needed to know that for the next 300 episodes, and they didn't really tell me that. So,
true. Yeah, but so yeah, so Chakran, the reason we've never heard of him is because he's never been to Earth, but he is a ghoul that defeated or was defeated by Apophis. Um, and honestly, the more important part of that scene is that Zena's hiding something and won't. Yeah. So Teal'c and Jonas find Jack and Sam and fill them in, and he's like, okay, you guys keep digging on what's going on here. We're going to go back to SGC and get the Tritonin to the lab and see what's going on there. So Jonas goes back to talk to Xena, and she like freaks out a little bit. She's like, there's a mistake. I have no idea what you're talking about. You must have misunderstood me. And they're like, well, shit. Someone's already got
Also, this scene, whenever wait, is this the scene with Jonah and Tilk and Zena, or just Jonah and
No, this
Zena?
is the one with just Jonas and Xena inside the tomb where he's got the composition notebook and he's trying to hand it to her with the ciphers in it.
Right. And so he's like, I was convinced that at this moment he was for sure the next Daniel Jackson and was about to fall in love with this woman.
Oh no,
And
for this entire episode, there's like romantic
yeah,
music playing underneath the two of them.
right. And I was like, I cannot, we are not that far into Jonas, and he has already become the new person that has to marry everyone from off world.
I mean, to be fair, Teal'c is married and slash no, he's not anymore. He's widowed because his wife is
Yeah.
officially dead now. His wife and his first love both actually dead. So like he
Yeah.
could fall in love, but probably he won't. That's not really
Mhm.
his MO. And Sam and Jack are both gonna flirt and have dalliances, but like let's be real, they're in love with each other and can't do anything
Right.
about it. So Jonas doesn't have anybody. He can
Okay.
unlike very married and hooking up with people anyway, Daniel Jackson. Jonas has no reason to not like who is to
Okay,
stop
but
him from falling in
Jonas
love?
is new to Earth, and you have to figure yourself out before you fall in love with someone. And he has not had time to adjust to this new lifestyle.
He just has such a big heart. Like he just
Oh,
loves.
I know.
He's just I don't think he's in love with anyone. I think he just loves people in a way that like most women have never had a person actually care about them that much. Like he is the guy that makes all of us pick our bars up off the ground and set them somewhere that men will actually have to
Right.
reach to get. And he isn't trying to date you. He's just trying to teach you that you're worth more.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's true. But
Daniel's
how I felt by the end
Daniel's
of the
just trying to
episode.
fuck everybody.
Or marry them all in different, just like have a different, it's like when they talk about like pilots and flight attendants have like a different girlfriend or wife in every city.
Oh yeah, he's like a sailor with a broad at every port. Like he's like
Exactly. Yeah.
Yep.
Oh.
But yeah, so they're like very confused. So then they wait till she leaves her little office tent thing, and Jonas breaks in and goes through all her stuff and finds her information. And it shows that she has received this Tritonin medicine, but actually she like receives regular injections. And they have like an injection schedule and a map of the city. So they decide that they're going to go to the place and like snoop some more and figure out what's going on. But she is watching all of this.
Yeah.
I do also love the idea, like later in the episode, where somebody says something, where she says something to them about the fact that she was watching all this, and Jonas is like, "Oh, I thought we were being sneaky," and she's like, "No," because if there's anyone who is not sneaking through a crowd, it's Jonas and Teal'c.
It's yeah, for sure.
Never have they been unnoticed anywhere.
Right.
So they break into the facility and they find this place where they like the drug is actually manufactured. And in that place, they also find a shit ton of Goa'uld symbiotes in vats.
Yeah.
And then they're discovered. And in the ensuing fight, Jonas gets knocked into one of the vats, and a symbiote is like fucking coming for him.
I was like, what is about to happen? We have had too much going on this season. This cannot happen right now.
Teal'c pulls him out, but the guard that he was fighting is not as lucky. He gets taken over by the symbiote. Teal'c immediately is like, all right, we got to shoot him now. He's a Goa'uld. But he like doesn't do anything. He doesn't wake up. He doesn't react. There's no glowing eyes. There's no aggression. He's like fucking unconscious still.
Right.
And the other guards are like, put your weapons down. And Jonas is like, there's something very wrong here. This is not what's supposed to happen when a Goa'uld takes over your body.
Yeah.
I'm confused. So they put down their weapons because what? And an argument then takes place between all the powers that be, and SG-1 is like, "What the fuck are you doing?"
Yeah.
Um, and they're like, "The symbiote is necessary for creating the Tertonin," and Jack's like, okay, here's my question. He's like, "I morally, ethically disagree with you. I'm kind of mad about it, but more than that, I have a fucking question. You, Mister, I don't know how to turn the gate on. Where did you get that many gold?
Yeah.
Riddle me this, Batman."
I was like, that is the most valid question. When he said that, I was like, that was the first thing I was
Yeah,
thinking.
no. Um, and Dolan's like, "Here, this is how. Welcome to this secret part of the facility where we have a whole ass gold queen hooked up to like a fucking matrix machine popping out babies by force."
It kind of made me think of the face of,
The face of Bo.
yeah.
Except for that no one was forcing the face of Bo to have unwarranted children through his
Right, right,
face.
right. The like the style
The
of what
the
was
the way
happening.
um and they were like, "We breed our own gold in captivity." Great. The guard is not waking up and they don't really know what's wrong. And Teal'c's like, "Listen, from my knowledge, history lesson according to Teal'c. Um, Before the Jaffa, the symbiotes did not always work when they blended with humans. It was like a shock to both of the systems. They basically bred the Jaffa specifically to have these little human pouches to put the Goulds in to teach them how to be a part of human biology so that they didn't die when they blended. But when they blend unsuccessfully, they both die, and that man is not dead. So I don't have an answer for you." And Sam's like, "Okay, well, there's only one place I can think to get any additional answers, and we're going to have to call the Tok'ra." And so they then explain to the the Pangari what the Tok'ra are.
They really don't know a lot for
The fucking
kind of knowing a
shenanigans they're
lot.
pulling.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah. It's
They're
like you
like,
threw a toddler into the middle of New York City and they were trying to like take over the town.
yeah,
It's
it's
like
like,
you don't even know how to keep yourself alive in this situation. How are you gonna do anything else?
no, it's basically like they got like a fucking cookbook and had never been in a kitchen before and thought that they could make French pastries. Like, what the fuck are
Yeah,
you doing? They're like, "I don't know what a stove
right.
is, but like, here's a crepe." What?
Right, yeah. Oh, yeah, they got a lot going on there.
So then Jonas goes to apologize to Senna for breaking in and like going through her stuff, and she's like, "I know." She was like, I kind of wanted you to, like, because I couldn't tell you because I didn't want to get hurt. Like, she's like, if they took away, like, it's a privilege to get this drug, and if they took it away from me, like, I could die, and I like not really about that life. Um,
Hmm.
but I wanted you to know the answer. And he's like, "Yeah, but like, how are we supposed to trust each other if we're like lying to each other?" She's like, "Here, make it up to me. Finish translating this wall because I still don't actually know what I'm talking about." And
Right.
that whole thing about having you help me wasn't a lie. Like, I do need help.
Yeah,
And he's like, "Okay, cool." He's in love, but not really.
right.
And so then Malik and another Tok'ra named Kelma come in. And if you'll remember, Malik was the one we met last week. So, like, at least
Hmm.
there wasn't a big fucking jump and they expected you to remember it from 15 weeks before. I
Right,
was
right, right.
so um, they come in and they're examining the guard and they find that the symbiote, while full grown, also like scans in their system as if it's like an immature to take a host. Like there's something wrong with the Gould itself. Um,
Yeah,
and they discuss that there's a possibility of the queen voluntarily like withholding knowledge from the symbiote so that it can't be used to take over another person correctly. So they're like, "Can we see the queen and run some like scans and studies on her to like figure out what's happening?" And so
yeah,
they take her over there and they're like, and Jack's like, "Yeah, I know it's really sad. I'm so sorry." And they're like, "I mean, Gold have done worse to people. Like
yeah.
they're like, it yes, and no, like I don't
They're like,
they
this doesn't really affect our moral
they're
code
like
at
it doesn't
all.
affect
Like,
us morally. Like they found a way to use the Gould to help themselves, like after everything that the Gould have done to them, like it is
yeah.
what it is. The biggest problem here is that this Gold Queen is dying. Like
Mhm.
she's got cellular degeneration. She's not gonna live. So
Right.
that's where the actual issue is, not morally. Uh the rude thing that they said was like that basically I was like they basically see it as like tit for tat, but they're mostly surprised that they were capable of doing this. Which, like, to be fair, they can't turn the gate on, but they were capable of doing this, so
Right.
like agreed.
Yeah.
um we get a message from Janet. She calls Jack and Sam to let them know that while the Tritonin is a miracle drug, what it does is it basically acts as a symbiote and it completely rewires the human immune system so that it is your new immune system. And without the drug, you don't have an immune system.
It's like
So,
your microdosing gold.
yeah, it's basically like every time all the things that happen to Teal'c's body, every time they have to take Junior out for any period of time, happens to them when the drug like wears off of their system, so they have to get regularly injected.
Yeah.
Um, with the queen dying, they can't make more past the Gould that they have, and so soon all of the people who are on the drug will also start dying because they will stop getting injections and their immune system won't exist anymore. Um, so they go to talk to Dolan, and he kind of admits that he kind of like knew all of that, and they were like looking for a new queen. That's why they wanted to go to the Gould homeworlds because they were trying to just buy themselves some more time because they realized that they're in too deep. To his credit, he was like, "Listen, I know I withheld some information, but like I was trying to figure out how you were going to react to things. We know we're in too deep. We're not trying to make more of the drug. We're trying to figure out how to reverse it or
How
like
to not die.
how to not die. And
Yeah.
unfortunately, right now we are running out of time. And if we don't get another queen, we all will die before we discover how to not die.
Right. Right.
Um, we go back to the cavern where they're looking at the walls to like translate everything. And Xana tells Jonas and Teal'c that her father is actually the one who found the queen. So like she takes responsibility for all of this happening, and like if everybody dies she feels like it'll be her dad and her fault. um
Yeah.
and they're trying to talk about a solution. She like feels like not only is it's her job to figure out a solution, that's why she's so desperate to like translate the walls and figure out what they're missing. She wants to know what's going on. But while they're talking, Jonas is like, hey Teal'c, remember how you said this tomb or this building was a palace for Chakran? And Teal'c's like, yeah. He's like, then how come this fucking wall is talking about Ra?
Yeah. We're just like having a lot of throwbacks this episode.
And so then they're reading the wall, and oh wait, hold on, we pause there. That's like we flip scenes because it's like dun 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 rah, and then it flips to the next scene.
Yeah.
The Chokra agree to study the drug, but they do say that they're more likely to get an antidote than any perfection of the drug. They're like, okay, we will work on it, we will take it to our technology and see what we can do with it, but we don't expect to be able to like fix the drug, just maybe save these people who are already on it.
Right.
Jonas and Teal'c are working to translate the temple walls, and they discover in the stories about Ra that this temple did belong to Ra, and then Shakran uh, basically beat Ra and took over this temple, um, forcing Ra to flee the planet. But before Ra fled the planet, he had buried his former queen there for betraying him and basically put her in a jar to live in isolation forever, the way that Osiris and Isis were. Um, and
Wait,
his
so did he jar Osiris and Isis?
I don't know that it's clear who did that. I think Apophis
Okay.
jarred Osiris and Isis,
Oh, right.
but
I do think that's true.
but
Talk about
basically,
family drama.
yes. So basically, Egeria was Ra's queen. She was his
Right.
queen, and then she kind of started to grow a conscience and was like, I don't really think that this is cool, that we're just like taking people and that they don't want
Right.
it. And obviously the Goa'uld symbiotes are very similar to bees or like
Hmm.
ants or like Komodo dragons, where you just need one to be a girl to have a baby
Right.
and then move on. And if there's boys there, and then like really, Goa'uld don't have genders except for the queen, really. The Goa'uld gender, like most people talk about the Goa'ulds being male or female, but that's almost entirely dependent on the host. The
Yeah.
Goa'uld itself doesn't have a gender except for the queen.
For the queens.
But Egeria, she, since the queens pass on that like inherent knowledge of everything, Egeria was passing on to her offspring the idea that it was not okay to take hosts by force, thus creating the entire race of the Tok'ra.
Which is
Ra,
very fascinating.
yeah,
I don't know that I thought about, are we gonna find where they came from? But I'm glad that we found out the
yeah.
backstory.
Ra obviously was like, bitch, you cannot be my queen and also rise up against me,
Right, right.
and popped her in a jar for all eternity. Um,
Yeah.
and Teal'c obviously, and knows the Tok'ra, knows the stories, and obviously in the last 4 or 5 seasons, we've gotten to know the Tok'ra a lot, and we have heard mention of Egeria before in passing.
Yeah.
And Teal'c is like, if this is true, then what they have up there is not a Goa'uld.
I I don't remember hearing about Agara in passing.
Egeria was mentioned.
Ageria,
Yeah. No, it was very, very briefly. I'm trying to remember. I just looked up which episode they talk about her in. She is mentioned in the episode Crossroads. Um, Crossroads is the episode where Shaunach tries to convince everyone that you can change your symbiote.
right,
And when they are talking about the ability to change a symbiote's mind or anything, the Tok'ra, like Anise says, the great Queen Egeria broke from the Goa'uld over 2,000 years ago. Her and her offspring are became the Tok'ra. Uh, um, And Freya says Egeria came to the Tauri to stop the Goa'uld from taking humans through the Stargate as slaves. Ra found her and killed her, but not before she spawned our movement. Um,
right,
so so we have heard, it was just very, Anise slash Freya briefly talked to them about the fact that like they had a queen that was the offshoot that is responsible for all the Tok'ra and the way the genetics work and how Goa'uld memories are passed down by birth. So it was very, very briefly. They mentioned like in legend, 2,000 years ago, Egeria was the queen that like rebelled against Ra. That's the
right.
most but we were told in that episode in season 4 that she was killed by Ra. Um, Teal'c is like, we have always believed that she was dead. If she isn't dead, that means that this is like the biggest of all of the big deals.
Right.
Um,
Yeah, we were
so
talking about this episode before we got on, and I was like, I feel like really big things happened because
um
you were like, I don't, there's not a lot that happened. I was like, I think really big things happened. You're like, I just can't talk about the big things
okay,
yet.
so obviously Egeria, that is a big deal. So Tritonin is a very big
Mhm.
deal, but I can't talk about
Why? Right, right.
the future implications of Tritonin and its existence, because like at the end of this episode, we go away with the Tok'ra studying it.
Yeah.
We have seen in the past when the Tok'ra decide they're going to study something, the fucking wild shit they come up with. So that
Stay tuned.
stay tuned. And I'm very excited about something specifically that has to do with Tritonin in the future, but like that is the part. But in my mind, I was like, fuck Egeria. The most exciting thing about this episode is the Tritonin discovery, and I can't talk about that. So like I was like, and then you were like, what about like the whole Tok'ra queen? I was like, oh yeah,
I was
I
like,
guess.
what about the Queen of Tok'ra?
I
The
was like, oh
Tok'ra.
yeah, no, I guess that is something kind of big that I should probably talk about. Um, Although interestingly, I was talking in our last Hannibal episode about watching something and like physically getting like chills. I don't know if I was just too tired when I watched this episode this morning, but when the moment when Jonas and Teal'c are discovering that this is Egeria and like not saying it loud, but saying it, and there's that look of like, oh my God, on their face. I literally had full body goosebumps. I was like about to cry. And I was like, I don't think normal people react this way when they watch TV.
No, sometimes that happens. I watched this mostly on a plane that I was already a little nervous about because it was bad weather and it was an hour and a half late and it was like 11 o'clock at night. So I did not have the same reaction. However, if I had watched it at a normal time of day, I think I might would have had the same reaction because it felt in my soul that way. Yeah.
I'm so sorry. One of my students from St. Andrews, his dad passed away. I just got a text. Okay, sorry. I wasn't gonna look at it, but all the messages that my phone was like continuously vibrating and I was like, what's
Yeah.
going on? And then I looked and one of the messages was like, this is so sad. Thank you for sharing. Oh my God, I'm so sorry. Like, and I was like, what the fuck happened? Okay,
Right.
I'm gonna have to read those and then call Dan when we take a break.
That's fine.
Huh. The team, Jonas and Teal go and obviously tell everything that we just talked about them discovering to
Right.
the rest of the team, and the team is weighing the pros and cons and decide that like they have to tell Kalmak and Mala and Kalma. That's like Malek and Kalma. I like fucking
Yeah.
put their names together about Ajiria's identity. Like it would not be fair. So Malek and Kalma are shocked. They're thrilled that Ajiria is alive, but also like obviously they're like the fuck. That's like an affront to our entire existence that you're like mass producing. But also, like, fuck you, because when you thought it was just a random old queen, you were like, who cares? I have no moral objection to it. And now you find out
Yeah.
it's
Your
your
queen.
queen, and you're like,
Yeah.
oh my God.
Yes, they were incorrect for that.
Yeah.
But if as a removed person, not part of the Tok'ra or the Goa'uld, I do think the Queen of Tok'ra is more important. But
Sure,
they don't
sure.
get to say
But
that because they were very
I also had moral objections to them like doing it to a Goa'uld
right.
anyway. Like obviously I don't want the Goa'uld out there running around having fun and like stealing
Sure.
human slaves, but like
But like don't torture them
it's
either,
like the death penalty. What gives you the
Yeah.
right to kill someone just because they killed someone else? Like who made you
Right.
the decision maker?
Yeah.
So
You can't just like hold someone in captivity forever, like in that kind of situation.
yeah.
So it's just
Jack's like, here's the thing, I agree with you, but do you have anything to offer? Because they're not gonna just like give her up.
right.
And they're like, yeah, we tried, but we can't figure out the Tritonin. There's something genetically wrong with the symbiotes that makes it impossible for this to work. Because if this drug worked the way it was supposed to, they should just need one injection and be done and be cured. And that's not what's happening. So we looked into that and we genuinely can't understand the genetic like deficiency that these symbiotes have. So we
Right.
don't know. Dolan feels bad when he finds out that it's actually the Tok'ra Queen. Like he genuinely does feel bad, but he's also like, my
Mhm.
sympathy and my regret and my remorse don't change the fact that by giving her back to you, all of my people will die.
Right. Like at this point, it's my people over your people. Like,
And he's like, and I can feel bad and I can try to make it up to you in other ways, but I can't sacrifice my entire race of people for your
right.
race of people. Who
Yeah.
gets to live? Who gets to decide who gets to live again?
Right. Right.
So they're fighting, and so Malik and Dolan are fighting about that. And while this is happening, nobody seems to notice that Kelma not there. She sneaks off, breaks into the room, and sacrifices herself for the queen. So now Egeria is living inside of this blonde curly haired lady and Kelma is dead. Jack and Sam then also get into a fight. Everybody's just fucking mad at each other this whole episode. And they're fighting because Sam still believes that the Tok'ra have good intentions and Jack still doesn't.
Um, I mean, to be fair, we've had mixed responses from them, depending on which person you're speaking to at the
Correct.
So,
and then Egeria wakes up and Egeria tells them that Kelma was correct. She is dying. There's nothing they can do about it. And she's like talking to Sam and the Penguins, and she's like, I understand that what you were doing wasn't malicious. Neither is what I did.
right.
Um, we have a really sweet scene when in the whole Jonas is actually like a romantic love interest for everyone. Jonas is sitting on the side of the road with Zana, and he tells her all about why he left Kelowna and what it was like to lose all his people and what it was like to watch people that he respected make bad decisions. And she's like, I'm not afraid of dying. I'm not afraid that this is the end. I'm just afraid that nobody will have learned anything from this. Like that it won't get better.
Yeah.
And he's like, I think you're wrong. I think people have already figured out that they made the wrong decisions. And Egeria admits to everyone who's with her that she did create the flaw and she deliberately like blank slated the symbiotes, hoping that when it didn't work the way they wanted it to, they would give up and let her go and not be stubborn, greedy assholes.
Sure.
It didn't work. And they have a both sides come to Jesus moment, and she decides that she's going to help. And she will create her final act will be to create the antidote so that even though she will not live, the spirit of the Tok'ra and what they stand for will continue to live.
Right.
And then the Tok'ra take her body back with them so that they can have a funeral. And they promise to return to with the cure, and amends are made between everyone. And we all live happily ever after.
Yay.
Except for Egeria, who's very dead.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Like I said, for some reason, everything that I just talked to you guys about, all the tangents that I went on about like who Egeria was and what the science was and what the mythology of Chakran and all that stuff was, not one of those things was listed as trivia on any website. None of the websites have trivia.
That all feels very important to know. So I don't really get it.
Yeah.
Why they didn't want to tell us.
There was like trivia that was like incorrectly regarded as goofs. They found a jar and they said there was a female in it, and you can't know it's a female, except for that they did know it's a female because it was a queen. Like, and I was like, this is your trivia page? So I have nothing for you, unfortunately. So before we punch people, do you have any thoughts, theories, questions, concerns?
I don't know. I feel like this like mid-ish season is gonna be massive. Like I understand you're saying that the Triptylon comes back anyways, but like meeting the Queen of the Tok'ra and Ra's ex-queen wife, those are all very big things. And I feel like we haven't, I feel like we've had a lot of big things this season already too.
Yeah.
It just keeps ramping up. And so I'm a little nervous for where we're going because things just keep getting wild and I don't want to forget them. I don't want to forget about things that happen. But I like it. It's a good episode. That's my
so who do you want to punch?
I think Melek. That's the main guy who was like, you can totally torture this gold, but wait, she's ours. Okay.
Yes.
I kept getting the two of them confused. So
it's okay. I think he was one of the ones we punched last week too for his bullshit on the other planet. I am gonna punch Tagar, who is the commander-in-chief of the Pangar army, who kept telling Dolan not to tell them the truth and who was trying to hide the fact that they were trying to go kill more gold queens.
Yeah, I was split between the two of them, so that's definitely a good one.
Who is your MVP?
Ageria. Did I say it right?
Yeah.
Ageria, because she's like, I mean, she first of all created was like the first rebel.
Mm-hmm.
And so she's the first rebel. And then she was stored in a jar for gazillions of years and then still came back and did her best to protect the people around her and sacrificed herself in the end. Like, what a queen.
Yeah. I think that is pretty much the main correct answer, but I do think I'm going to go with Zena just because she is the one who's like, I understand that I may have to sacrifice myself for this, but I want to make sure that if I'm going to, it's going to be a sacrifice, it's going to be a sacrifice that's worth it, that somebody's going to gain something
Right.
from, and that it's not going to be useless, wasteless death.
Right.
Yeah. So next episode of Stargate is the mid-season finale. So it's kind of a big one. I keep saying next week is just kind of a big one. You could, like you said, season 6, we're getting some bangers in here.
Yeah.
So yeah, if you have any thoughts, questions, concerns, please feel free to follow us
Hit
or
us up.
yeah, hit us up. Email us on all of the or email us at deafandaliens@gmail.com. Follow us or talk to us on any of the social media at Death and Aliens. You can follow me at EMKAY_superstar.
And you can find me at CCloud13.
And with that, we will see you on Thursday for some more absolutely wild Hannibal.
Yeah.
Bye.